Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And it's been a big day on the Supreme Court. And it's one that, in my opinion, pretty much puts the final coffin nails in the coffin of the American conservative quasi-philosophy, whatever you want to call it. Now, this is not an entirely bad thing. Why? Because conservatism never conserved anything. Absolutely nothing. From the beginning, it wasn't possible for it to do so because it was never a political philosophy. And I've discussed this in depth in a chapter in my book, Cuckservative. I believe it might even be the chapter that is in the sample. There's a couple of sample chapters up on Unauthorized. If you go into the audiobook channel, Cuckservative, I believe, is up there, and I think it covers the section on conservatism. And this is not about what I think conservatism is. It's how American conservatism of the National Review, American Conservative, etc., variety was defined by its creator and the individual who functionally named what it was. And so, when you look at the 10 canons of conservatism as they were defined, you quickly see that it was totally and utterly incapable of ever conserving anything. Because all it ever was a posture. All it ever was a pose. William F. Buckley, when he had his famous phrase of standing athwart history shouting no. Well, that's not a way to accomplish anything. Just standing there saying no might slow things down a little bit, but that's the best that you can hope for. That's the only thing that you can accomplish. And it was always, exactly as Magister Ludi describes it, it was always all bark and no bite. And so the good thing about the Supreme Court decisions today, where, if you're unaware, they decided that sexual orientation is actually a category that was protected by the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which of course is more of that retroactive nonsense. They also refused to hear any of the various gun rights cases because they're afraid to go against the case called Heller. They're afraid to overturn Heller, but they're also not willing to uphold it and establish it as the law of the land. Right now, it's only at the circuit court level. They don't want to allow it. Yeah, so that's what the non-decisions and so forth. And then there were also two other decisions. I won't bother getting into the details, but the point is that the false hope is now gone. There is no more false hope in the conservative non-philosophy. Anyone who calls themselves a conservative, says they stand up for conservative values, etc., is lying to you and attempting to fool themselves. Was it a gatekeeping operation from the start? I don't think necessarily. And certainly there were plenty of honest conservatives, people who genuinely and legitimately believed in those in the various principles that were often discussed: small government, free trade, etc., etc. Now, it's kind of interesting that I never fell for that one, although I did fall for the libertarian lie. But both conservatism and libertarianism are false. And that's how we know what is true and what is not. That's how we know what is legitimate and what is not, is what is true and what is not. Odd Rob actually has a good question. What does the conservative philosophy have to do with non-conservative Supreme Court decisions? Because the conservative philosophy puts its hope in the legality of those decisions. And so conservatism is fundamentally reactive and defensive and is incapable of retaking ground. It is philosophically and conceptually incapable of retaking ground. And so that's why I'm saying that this is a good thing, that there's no more false hope in something that was always fundamentally unable to do what its advocates and its supporters wanted it to do. There was no possible route for American conservatives to be successful advocating and pushing the policies that they were pushing. And look, guys, try not to be retards, okay? I'm talking about a subject. If I happen to mention something else, a tangential thing, don't ask questions about that. I'm not going to answer any of them. We're talking about the recent Supreme Court decisions and its implications for the conservative philosophy and the conservative movement going forward. And ultimately, the reason that people were comfortable with the conservative philosophy and the reason that the conservative movement was attractive to them is because it was a way of trying to conceal what they really wanted to stand up for. If what you believe in is the American nation, then you need to stand up directly for that. If what you believe in is Christianity, if what you believe in is Western civilization, then you have to stand up directly for those things, and more to the point, stand against those things that seek to destroy it. One of the things that always rang false to me about conservatives is their fundamental and intrinsic dishonesty on the question of race. Every time you heard conservatives talk about racial issues in any context, they were always lying. When George Bush was talking about Hispanics being natural conservatives, because they value the family and a lot of them are Catholic and all this sort of thing, I knew it was a blatant lie because, I have extended family in Mexico and elsewhere. And Mexico is a intrinsically socialist state. 2 of the 3 major parties, and the more popular of the 2 major parties, are not just socialist parties, small s, they are capital S socialist parties that are members of the Socialist International. The majority of the Mexican voting population, 2/3 of it or more than 2/3, is to the left of the U.S. Democratic Party. And when you look at the the way that conservatives would talk about race. They'd say, well, the black family was doing fine until the Great Society and welfare destroyed it. Those are lies. The only reason that the black family was strong, relatively, and together was because they lived in fear of white retribution if they didn't live like white people. It's the same reason that Muslims in India tend to behave better and more in keeping with the majority way of life than they do anywhere else. Why? Because whenever the Muslims get a little bit out of line, the Hindus go and burn scores of them, sometimes hundreds of them. The reason that you don't see very much Muslim acting up, terror and so forth in India, in the same way that you do in Europe and in the States and so forth, is because when that happens, Hindus go out and burn the entire part of burn the entire Muslim part of town with the people in the buildings. So, unsurprisingly, they tend to behave better. Well, that's exactly what was the case with the black family. They were not permitted to behave the way that they behave now. And if they did behave the way that they behave now, there tended to be very, very unpleasant consequences of the sort that people are still being, all dramatic and pretending to be upset about. Never mind the fact that the net result was much more civilized and much better for everyone. Imagine that. Holding people accountable to standards, whether they like those standards or not, does tend to improve the overall level of behavior. So, again, another conservative lie. Simply getting rid of the welfare state, which isn't going to happen, wouldn't be enough to convince Africans to give up the African societal model and live like a bunch of people from Northern Europe. It doesn't even make sense, not from a societal point of view, not from a social scientific point of view, not from an evolutionary point of view, not from a biblical point of view. Different people prefer to live in different ways. And the reality is that the way that Northern Europeans and Americans who are descended from Northern Europeans tend to prefer to live is not terribly natural. One interesting thing is that white children who were kidnapped by American Indians and raised by American Indians didn't want to go back to the white way of living. They really enjoyed the primitive freedom of the American Indian lifestyle. And let's face it, if you look at the people who were rioting in Minneapolis, down near my old stomping grounds around Lake and Hiawatha, did they look like they were, did they look like they weren't having fun? Most of them look like they're having a pretty good time. It's fun to burn stuff. It's fun to break things. And if you don't have much of a long time preference, why not? And so, it's very, very foolish to subscribe to any belief system that requires you to lie first and foremost to yourself. Because everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. All the people who said, I don't see color, they're full of crap. Absolutely no truth in them. They know it. And you know they know it because they react with anger anytime you say anything about it. And so the idea that you were ever going to turn things around by virtue of putting the right 5 people on the court, that was always a false hope. Why? Because once it got to the point that people were literally inventing laws out of imaginary emanations and penumbras of things written scores, even hundreds of years before, there was no way to come back from that within that system. T.D. Mallard is wrong. He says, we are all God's children. That's not what the Bible says. If we are all God's children, who are the children of the devil? That's another conservative lie. It's all about love. Really? God says to hate the wicked. God rejoices when the wicked suffer the consequences of their actions. And so, in fact, we're told that God will even tell people that he never knew them. And we should pray that we are not one of those that God will spit out of his mouth and will say he never knew us. And so you cannot be a child of the lie and a servant of the devil and be a child of God. It's not possible. Is there a verse to quote? Yes, there are. Just go to Bible Gateway. I don't make these things up. We're on a video here that we don't do footnotes and citations while we're talking. And so, but the point is that the conservative lie, the libertarian lie, they're not going to save you. They can't save you. They're not even capable of it because there's no truth in them. Yes, there's more truth in the conservative lie than there is in the liberal lie. There's more truth in the libertarian lie, maybe, than the communism lie. But here's the fact. Communism, despite the idiocy of its economics, is actually better for a nation than either modern liberal democracy or modern conservative failure. This is an observable fact. And so, Waylon asks, how should churches teach their congregations this information without being kicked out? You speak the truth whether they kick you out or not. I'm not going to refrain from saying what is true for fear that YouTube is going to kick me off. I've already been kicked off of Twitter. I left Facebook of my own volition just because I didn't like it. I've been kicked off of Goodreads. I've been, they faked my ejection from the SFWA, but everyone believes that I was expelled from there. It's vital, not just for you, but for your family, for your friends, for your society, and for your nation, that you speak the truth and you stop lying to everyone else, that you stop hiding. Joanna Kettle asks, is this why you believe the race war is coming? It's not a race war per se. Yes, there will be diverse sides and race will factor into them, but it's going to be broader than that. Race is a very, very broad classification. Wars take place between nations and between tribes, both of which are smaller divisions, partitions, than race. And so it's not just going to be black versus white. It's going to be town against town, city against city. There's going to be religious aspects to it. And I believe it's going to be coming not because of this, not because of the latest developments. This is just the form that it's taking. I believe it because I have studied at the feet of two great masters of military history and strategy, Martin Van Creveld and William S. Lind. And the lesson of military history is diversity plus proximity equals war. Immigration equals war. And the United States has been the recipient of the largest movement of human beings in history, which means it is probably going to be the site of the largest war in human history. Karen Took the Kids said, the last week was so overt and nonsense that Sam Harris has almost woken up. He's so upset he can barely have conversations about conversations. Well, Sam Harris is not stupid. He may be sloppy. I've certainly criticized him considerably in a book I wrote about 12 years ago. But he sees what's coming. He knows what's coming. And so, a lot of people are finally beginning to see what's coming, and they can't hide behind the lies anymore. Just like today, conservatives can't hide behind their hope that the Supreme Court is magically going to overturn everything that's happened for the last 50 years. It's not going to happen. It's not going to do that. Is a war really going to happen? Of course a war is going to happen. There's always war. I publish a 10-volume series called There Will Be War that was created by the late, great Jerry Pournelle. He was predicting this stuff, some of this stuff, back in the 80s. Nordwolf forces separation of church and state is one of the biggest lies, while the church takes hush money through 501c3. Well, actually, that might be one of the additional benefits of the gloves coming off. They're not going to be able to take money anymore and preach the gospel. Good. Choose. But this isn't sad. This isn't sad. This is reality. And you've been living in a fantasy for a long time. We've had too long a time of peace. Precisely. We've had so much peace in the United States proper, that it's hard for people living there to even imagine the possibility of war. That's not true in Europe. They know. Now, they have their own false hope. The whole idea that the European Union is somehow going to prevent conflict. Well, that's just absolutely nonsense. That's just absolute nonsense. And so, it's very, very important to look at the truth, recognize the truth, accept the truth. And it is ironic that people are, you look at Ireland. Africans are attacking Irish people in Ireland. It wasn't that long ago that the Irish were perfectly willing to fight the English and to fight the other Irish for the right to live as their own nation. It's not going to be long before the violent objections begin there too. And so it's not that success is boring. Somebody was wondering if that's the problem. The problem is that people get lazy. People begin to think that because something hasn't happened, it will never happen, it can never happen, and they don't have to worry about it anymore. Remember, even after World War I, after all the horrors of World War I, people believed that war would be impossible. And then World War II started. So, see, here's an example of someone clinging to the lies. I don't agree there's a race problem. I think it's a culture war. For example, I think an adopted black person by a white family in America would do fine and could adapt that culture easily. No, they can't. I've lived in other cultures. I've learned other languages. And it works to a point. But you can't fully adopt that other culture, and you certainly can't maintain and carry on that other culture, especially not when the numbers begin to multiply. Immigration is not a problem when it's 1, 2, or 3 people. Who cares? Makes no difference. But once you cross a certain threshold, then suddenly people begin to reveal that, well, I don't want to live like you do anymore. I want to live like my people do back in the old country. And then when their numbers increase, they say, well, why should we live the way that you want to live? There's more of us. It's a democracy. In fact, you have to live like us. So, anyhow, the culture and genetics and all of these things are intertwined inexorably. That's why when people say, well, is it nature or is it nurture? The answer is almost always both. It's never one or the other. And that doesn't mean that you have to hate people who are different. That's the crazy thing about this. I don't hate the Japanese. Nobody who knows anything about me would believe for a second that I hate the Japanese or that I hate Japanese culture. But I know beyond any shadow of a doubt that if I spent my entire life trying to become Japanese, it would never happen. It is not possible. Just fundamentally the way that you think, the way that you react, your instincts, all of those things war against your ability to be something that you're not. You can't train a cat to be a dog. The cat's always going to be a cat. And so, that doesn't mean that you can't, on a small scale, be a good guest. Of course you can. You should work very hard at it. But you also should never, ever forget that you are a guest. And so, nations are God's choice. God created the nations. Whenever you hear somebody talking about unity, be aware you're hearing somebody speaking with a forked tongue. You're hearing someone speaking with the whispers and promise of Satan. The Tower of Babel is the satanic dream. As Christians, we have to stand against that kind of false unity. The only real unity is in Jesus Christ. And that's another conservative lie. This one is a churchian lie. They say, well, it says there's neither Jew nor Gentile, so therefore race doesn't matter. Well, it's kind of funny. They never use that. They never cite that verse when they're talking about there's neither man nor woman. And they always leave off the in Jesus Christ bit. No, it doesn't matter where you're born. You know, it's not about geography. It's not about paperwork. It's about blood. It's about genetics. Nation. You know, in Italian, if you say where you're born, like for example, I would say sono nato a Boston. I was born in Boston. Sono nato. It derives from the same natio, same Latin verb that means birth. Not geography, blood, family. A nation is an extended family. You know, and it's, you know, I'm the one who coined the term magic dirt. The dirt is not magic. If I was born in Iran to my English, Irish, and Indian parents, I would not be Iranian. Any more than if I was born on the moon, I would not be Lunarian. Yeah, there's a lot of confusion between nation and state, but it's very easy. State is paperwork. State is political borders. State is imaginary. So, yeah, and Joanna's issue is typical. She says, I'm technically a mixed race person who has black skin, dun 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 dun. Yeah, you have identity issues. So do I. Most mixed race people do. You don't know where you fit in because you don't fit in anywhere. And that's just something that you have to accept. It doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make you a, any less who and what you are. But don't give in to the lies just because you want to feel comforted. Anyhow, we can go ahead with super chats and other questions now. I've covered most of what I wanted to cover. I've got a few little things to show you and stuff if you're interested related to Arkhaven and unauthorized and so forth. I do have a question here that's important. Have the Legal Legion agreed to defend the 72 against the countersuits? A countersuit, singular. Yes. There will be lawyers with the appropriate credentials dealing with those. I mean, there's some people are only dealing with arbitrations. Other people are going to only deal with the lawsuit, is my understanding. They're all over it. Let's see here. Skylar Smith says, have you ever been treated differently by Italians because they know you're an American? Well, first of all, Italians usually don't recognize me as American, and they haven't for many years. Actually, Italians are super friendly if you speak Italian. I'll tell you an amusing story here. We went to Rome, and we ended up spending a lot of time on at this one restaurant that had. I actually started getting coffee there 2 days before it opened. I was desperate for coffee. We didn't have any. There was no coffee maker in the place near the Colosio that we were renting. We went there for a couple weeks, and I couldn't. I just needed to find some espresso or something. And so I walked into this place, and I saw a big, espresso machine, and I was asking them, can I please have a coffee? And she's like, well, we're not open. I'm like, I just walked in. I can see your, I don't even open yet, but can I just get it? I'll pay. Just can I have a coffee? And she said, no, you don't understand. Like this is a new restaurant. We haven't even opened to the public. And then this guy came over and said, hey, what's up? And it turned out he was a retired Vatican policeman who had started this restaurant, and he was just a very friendly guy. And so we ended up chatting, and he's like, get this man an espresso, get me one too. And so I started going there 3 times a day. I'd go in the morning, I'd go in the afternoon, and go again in the evening just to get my espresso. And we ended up eating there. We ended up eating there like 2 or 3 times, and they're super friendly. Just they would always like give us like free desserts or whatever. And so as it happened, my brother was getting married around that time, and so they decided that they were going to come over and visit us, but first they were going to go to Rome on their honeymoon. And I said, okay, well, make sure you go to this restaurant and tell him that, make sure you tell him that you're the brother of the American writer. And because obviously we'd talked enough, and he knew I was an American. And so he ended up calling me, and he's like, so we're in Rome. I said, did you make it to the restaurant? He's like, yeah, about that. Are we related to these people? I said, no. Why? He said, well, I walk in and I said, hey, we'd like a table for 2. My brother said I'm supposed to say that I'm the brother of the American writer. And he goes, everyone's like, hey! And he's like, this guy comes over, he's like hugging me, he's kissing my wife, and I'm like, I thought they were like our cousins or something. It was just, Italians are just that welcoming, and another time I was on a train up in, I think it was Germany, and there had the push cart drink service, and somebody had ordered drinks from this woman, and they're all being very friendly, and I started paying attention, and I realized that the woman serving drinks was from the same city in Italy as the man and the 2 women he was traveling with. And so maybe it was in France. Anyhow, I can't remember. Anyhow, so this woman leans forward and says to me in French or German or whatever it was, excuse me, we don't mean to be so loud, but this woman, turns out we all know each other from home. And so I answered her in Italian, and I said, yes, I understood. I speak Italian. And they're like, oh! And next thing you know, they're like pouring me drinks, because, if you speak Italian, you are admitted to the party, more or less. I mean, obviously, if you're a jerk or something, but so the point is that you can be friends with everyone. We can all get along. We just can't all be the same. We're not the same. And the more that we understand that, and the more that we appreciate it, and the more that we respect the differences, the easier it is to actually find those points of commonality and get along. So anyhow, Drywall sends $5. Thank you. Welcome, Tyler, to the Bronze Pack. If you're a Bronze member, remember the benefit is notifications before these streams happen. So shoot me an email, voxday@gmail.com, and just, if you're a member, and because I don't get your email addresses from this, you need to shoot an email, say, hey, I'm a Bronze member, I'm a Silver member, and I want notifications. And I send them out before each Darkstream, more or less. Every now and then if I do an impromptu one, I don't. But generally speaking, I send them out 15 minutes to an hour before, and you get the notifications. So, because YouTube is not always great about letting the subscribers know. Bradley Hass said, what other top churchian lies should we look out for? Well, I think the main one is the idea that that right now is that Jesus was an immigrant and we should welcome all immigrants. That's probably the biggest one that they're pushing right now. It's not true. First of all, Jesus was not an immigrant or a refugee. He was a Roman citizen who actually, he was a Roman subject who moved from one Roman province to another and then back. That's like saying, when I was a kid, I moved from Boston to Minnesota, so I was a refugee, an immigrant. No, I was, both within the United States of America. I went from one state to the other. That's all that Jesus did. And again, the whole idea that God supports immigration, that's definitely not true. The Bible says if women and children and foreigners rule over you, you are cursed. Grime Knight says, for the Dark Lord Espresso Fund. Grazie mille. I appreciate that. Secret King, Call of Duty told me that Black Lives Matter, and my mom said I couldn't learn anything from video games. Yeah, there you go, I used to play Call of Duty a lot. I was a huge fan of Modern Warfare. But that was it. Let's see. Yeah, his parents fled from a murderous mixed race king. Exactly. So, hey, I just joined, and sorry this is off topic. Can anyone tell me what I need to do as a pre-October Patreon member of Castelia to notice them of an action? Just, let's see. Depends what it is, I guess. Let's see here. Who among us has not reached level 55 in Call of Duty Modern Warfare? Hey, I hit level 70 elite, which tells you that I spent way too much time playing that game. So anyhow, let's see here. Okay, a couple things. I want to show you a new feature on Unauthorized. Kind of pleased with this. This is the front page of Unauthorized. Some of you will recognize it. And if you notice, we now have latest video. Now, this is not actually the latest video because I believe Owen has put up his live stream today. But so what it does is whoever has uploaded the newest video is now accessible from the front page. So when things change, you'll be able to see it. And so In this case, it's the new video from the legend Chuck Dixon. It's called "Me and My Big Mouth." We actually tried also putting the name of the video up there, but Owen uses such absurdly long names that turned out to be a really bad idea. So we just say the latest video, and it tells you which channel it's on. You click on that, you click on the blue, and it will go directly to that particular video. Tyler Pankratz asks, "Hey Vox, any advice for getting through to paper Americans here in the Dakotas? Germans, Prussians, and Scandies get pissed off when I say we're not real Americans." Well, I guess, I mean, here's the thing. You just need to wait. They will understand. You know, but I mean, they're not. They've never understood British thinking. They've never understood the colonial British thinking and the principles and the policies. The Barbarian asks, off topic, who does your opening song? Hang on. We'll share that one some other date. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting what people say. Oh, well, you know, but they've lived here for, you know, since they came over. But, you know, the reality is that they never ever had any understanding of various traditions like limited government, like the common law, and so forth. And so it doesn't make them bad people and so forth, but it does mean that, you know, they aren't what they want to think they are. You know, ask them if, of course, since they're Scandinavian, ask them about that African's Viking ancestors. Does he have Viking ancestors? Well, you know, if you're not descended from the revolutionaries, you're not an American. It's that simple. So, but, you know, the problem is that, you know, the immigrant populations succeeded in redefining what American was. They transformed it from a nation to an idea because they wanted to feel that they belonged. So now it means nothing, which is why Gaddafi could say, America belongs to everyone. If America is just an idea, then anyone can have it. Dr. Zume said, I'm subscribed to most all of your projects and I missed UATV thinking I subscribed at the beginning. Is there a way I can donate for the missed time directly to you? This is quite, no, there's no, I mean, thank you, but there's no need for that at all. If you want to do something like that, then wait until the next big project and, you know, the next big crowdfunding and support it at one of the, you know, more significant levels. But there's, you know, just, I would encourage people to join unauthorized and to support unauthorized because, you know, it's one of the important engines of things going forward. But, you know, there's catch-up only applies to the Castelia library. There's no need for it on unauthorized. Rebecca Bear said, what do you think the future for Romania is? I'm a U.S. citizen debating dual citizenship. I think Romania will probably be more peaceful. So, Dr. Zume said, more super chats. Got the message loud and clear. No, I wasn't. You didn't get the message loud and clear. I wasn't asking for more super chats. I was saying, you know, wait, we're going to be doing some crowdfunding here in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 months. You know, go ahead and back those. You know, that's a great way. Let's see here. Speaking of Castelia Library, I'm going to show you these. I've shown a couple people, but so this is the Castelia Library book, the new one, and it's the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. They have been bound. This is the library, which is the cowhide, and it's looking great. Can't wait to get my hands on those. And then I don't think I showed this one. Maybe I did. Not that. And then we have Owen's Biggest Nightmare. And this is, of course, the Libraria Castalia version. And this is not a mock-up. This is the actual picture of the meditations in goatskin. And it's all 22 karat gold. So book 3, the next book, is Awake in the Nightland. And book 4 is The Divine Comedy by Dante. And so there's no way to get the missionaries. Those have all been purchased by subscribers, but you can still get these if you sign up. If you sign up for the Castalia Library, if you get a subscription, and then you pay the catch-up fee, 2 catch-up fees of $50, then you get the book at the subscription price. Otherwise, if there's any left, then these will be sold for $150 a piece, and the others will be sold for $400 a piece. So they're very expensive, obviously, and they're very high quality. In fact, people who are very familiar with Franklin Library and the Easton Press have said that these first 2 books of ours are already in what they would consider to be the top 5 or 10% of the Franklin and Easton books. Book 5 is volume 1 of Plutarch's Lives. Book 6 is volume 2 of Plutarch's Lives. And we suspect, we haven't made a final decision, but book 7 will probably be Summa Helvetica. We'll see. But yeah, it's we're very pleased with how they're turning out, and those of you who are subscribers will be happy to know that we are planning to start shipping them this week. The sign-up link, can you, Slapweasel, can you post the sign-up links? They're actually at Archaven. And the books are that color because they are imperial purple. We thought that a book by an emperor should be porphyrogenitus, which means born in the purple. How do I explain in simple terms to my mom, who is pro-refugee and donates money to them, that immigration is so dangerous? Tell her the story about the Goths. They were allowed in. They were refugees. They were disarmed. They were allowed in to the Roman Empire because they were about to be wiped out by the Huns. And within 40 years, they had chopped off the head of the emperor and defeated his armies, and ended up roaming around for the next 30 years or so, and then they finally sacked Rome. It's an object lesson in why you never, ever allow refugees. How well does the purple match royal purple? I don't know. I'm working off of pictures, which you can't trust the exact shades anyhow. The actual color, I'd have to look it up, but the actual color I could, next time or something, maybe on Social Galactic I'll post what the Pantone color is, and then you can see what it is. Varg believes Christianity promoted immigration to Europe. Varg believes a lot of stupid things. Certainly some Christian churches have promoted immigration to Europe. Other Christian churches reclaim the Holy Land. Will there be Marcus Aurelius t-shirts? I don't think so. So, all right, well, I think that pretty much covers everything we wanted to cover. Oh, I want to show you one more thing really quick. This is our latest thing up on, is it up? Let me see if this works. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is our latest Webtoon. We've got a number of Archaven and Dark Legion comics up on Webtoons, but I'd really encourage you guys to check them out because it's, even if you're not particularly into cartoons, it's a great way to tell stories. And so this is the first episode of Chicago Typewriter, for example. And we've entered it in the story contest. And Chuck Dixon is planning to get his Go Monster Go. And I'm planning to get my Knights in Shadow story up there before the end of the contest submission period on June 30th. And so I'd encourage you to check them out. And if you like it, either subscribe or like it. It's free. And this is, this is a new battleground in the culture war. And we don't win culture wars when people on our side don't show up. So instead of bitching about the movies and instead of complaining about the convergence of the television shows and so forth, this is how these things happen. This is how we start these things. Comics are the seeds for visual entertainment. And so I would just strongly recommend that you give these things a chance, that you have a look at them, and just support the good projects, support projects that aim towards the good, the beautiful, and the true. And even if you don't have any money, even if you don't have any time, it's really easy to just get a free subscription and check them out. And if you like them, click like. It makes a difference. It really does. Alt Hero, for example, you should read the discussions on Webtoons about it. Alt Hero has people discussing how the Black Lives Matter riots are similar to the fictional events of Alt Hero: The War in Paris. And so, check them out. If you feel like you like it, support it. But there's so many ways to support these things without ever spending a dime. And it's very useful, and it's very important, and it's making a difference. So, on that note, I will leave you. Have a good evening. I'm Voxday, and this is the Darkstream.